Okay, welcome back to Dave and Mickey's second hour on Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. This is the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net, so push the donate button or subscribe to the archives for only about $5 a month, and it's via Patreon. Check the website for details. If you're new to Shiny Side Out, welcome aboard. This is a tinfoil hat zone, so keep your arms within the vehicle. Turn off your personal reality inverters. That's Mickey's quote, I love that one. And please, no flash photography. It does set off the animatronics. We are glad you're on board, and thank you for inviting us into your lives. So follow, subscribe, or otherwise for the appropriate platform and the social media platform. And look, we're halfway through show number 471.
Biological weapons. So
I thought you were going to say 170
and 400.
There we go. So and we are talking about biological weapons, and this is the beginning of the show arc of biological weapons. You didn't miss anything. The previous hour was all about news. But we ask that you get yourself some great merchandise from the station's website. You can donate money and receive a gift at the same time, or just get access to the archives.
It'd be nice if somebody bought some of our merch. I'd like to see that.
We actually have merch on Zazzle, if you're interested. Yeah,
we do. Merch. Come on, I mean, the mugs are really cool. They got the Battle of LA picture on it.
Yeah, that's right. That's a smaller mug. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we have a medium-sized mug, which is the SSO Shiny Side Out co-branded Revolution Radio, and then we have the jumbo mug. The crowd goes wild. It's really good. I have my coffee from it daily. And when I say I drink one coffee, it's like that meme I posted, there's a guy holding like it's bigger than a bucket full of coffee. It's very funny. I only have one a day. I cut down.
Yeah, that's what happened. It's only 5 liters. Which reminds me of the American serving size, half a gallon, 2 liters of Coke as part of a supersized meal. That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's when you get the mixed sweats, Mickey.
Yeah, so we actually had this show cycle 3 times. We started some 7 or 8 years ago, talking about biological weapons specifically and what they mean, etc., the history of it and how it's being deployed today. Then we had this show again at the beginning of the pandemic. We thought, okay, well, this is really a good time. And now, a year into the pandemic, if you will, we're going to bring it to you again because a lot of things have changed significantly. And now we've got a lot more facts around what this actually is and what it looks like, and a lot more things make a lot more sense. But let me prep you for it with a slightly expanded preamble. So population reduction is really what we're talking about here, right? Sure, you say, conspiracy to kill off the vast majority of us. Well, that's BS. Someone would have blown the whistle. Someone would know, even with all the compartmentalization Dave and Mickey talk about. Pyramidal power structures, blah, 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 and all that stuff, right? Now,
we do talk about those.
That's a fair enough point of view, right? I mean, someone would have come out with it, but the thing is, people have come out with this. However, and recently, Project Blue Book, it is clear, and UFO Witness and shows like that have shown that, yes, you can keep a secret. But let's park that for a second. Now, we, Dave and I, believe that the reduction in population may be necessary because at a certain point we could reach critical mass. And that's really at the essence of our hypothesis.
Yes.
The awareness cascade, or rapture if you're Christian, or ascension if that is more your beat. A critical number of us that trigger the transcendence event. Hence, the culling is necessary to prevent that event from happening and keep us here in this particular quantum decoherence. And we'll get into that in some detail in another show cycle when we get to show number 500. Now, having said all that, I think they were successful in stopping it because of the events in Uluru at the end of last year.
That's right.
Because there was something that happened, but I think it could have happened bigger than it did. I think there's still something happening. I think things are still going to change, and the vibrational frequency will change for some. But look, let's just see what happens there. Now, but what you're asking is, where's the hard evidence that something is being covered up? That's a fair question. Now, let me tell you this. Between the year 2000 and now, right, and this is ongoing, by the way, well over 100 microbiologists have been killed under suspicious circumstances. And we go into this in some detail. This does not raise even little interest, really, We should just accept that these microbiologists' deaths are unrelated and coincidental. Now I ask you, who is the crazy tinfoil head wearer in this?
Oh, I am.
All right. Now we have the partial list a little further down in the show notes with the more interesting cases. A few more interesting facts have emerged in the past year, namely the advent of long COVID and the effect of SARS-CoV-2 on male fertility. The information is now included in this updated look at biological weapons and the current pandemic. The effect a potential catastrophic decrease in male fertility would have can only be speculated about. However, what is clear is that the agenda is to have us walk into the night with a whimper, not a scream. Gradual depopulation is so much easier on the assets. You understand? Like, if you were to kill, let's say tonight,
all of a sudden,
we killed 7 billion people, that would be a bad thing.
Yep.
Because everything would simply stop. The machinery of civilization, which the elite relies upon as well, make no mistake, would simply cease. If you have a gradual decrease, not a complete stop,
a slow decline,
gradual, in the birth rate, a significant decline in the birth rate, where you will stabilize the population over the course of a couple of generations, maybe to 500 million, whatever, maybe a billion, whatever the number is.
Significant.
Right? It would very much, it is still genocide, just to be very clear. Right? In fact, this goes beyond genocide. This is now species. What's the word for species murder? I mean, it goes beyond genocide here, right? Now, I want to start this with a quote by Malthus. Leave it up to you to look him up. Humans' unquenchable urge to reproduce would ultimately lead us to overpopulate the planet, eat up all its resources, and die in a mass famine. That fear, expressed in the 19th century by Malthus, is still firmly lodged in the minds, or, well, close approximations of the elite, approximations of the mind. Now, so that's the preamble here. So Dave, because the key thing here is that the elite believes there are too many of us, right? Number one, and a lot of us believe there are too many. We consume too much, etc. But that's not really the end game. The end game is to stop us from going to the awareness cascade, not to have a critical number. That's what we think. And the other, everything else is just window dressing, because Dave, how many people can the Earth actually support?
I know it's on a prior show, Mackie. I know that we spoke about something extraordinary to do with food. That I'm going to leave that for people to research. It's no surprise that as the world population continues to grow, the limits of essential global resources such as potable water, that means drinkable water, fertile land, forests and fisheries are becoming more obvious. You don't have to be a maths whiz to work that out. On the whole, more people use more resources and create more waste. But how many people is too many? How many of us can Earth realistically support? Influenced by the work of Thomas Malthus, carrying capacity, as he quoted, can be defined as the maximum population size of an environment that an environment can sustain indefinitely. Debate about the actual human carrying capacity of Earth dates back hundreds of years. The range of estimates is enormous, fluctuating from 500 million people, that is, to more than 1 trillion. Scientists, though, disagree not only on the final number, but more importantly, about the best and most accurate way of determining that number, hence the huge variability. So Maggie, the scientists are arguing about the math.
Yep.
Right? But one thing, I wanted to say that my little thing first, and to be honest, the current quantity of people on Earth could be more than fed and serviced by the amount of food that we produce right now at the current level.
Yep.
No one on the planet would need to be hungry if we had our distribution methods and what's the word I'm looking for? The motive behind it, right? The MO. If our MO from a society was to feed everybody, everyone would be fed. But if we throw food away because it became spoiled and no one bought it, that food could have gone to someone hungry, right? But our model is not about that. It's about delivering food to people who have money to buy it. That's it.
Yes.
That's the whole model. It's only about a product, selling a product, and profit. All right. So, did you want to take each line separately, Mackie, or something like that?
Yeah, whatever you like.
Yeah, cool. All right. So I'll start it off. This is the estimates of Earth's carrying capacity, and if I was to say that 6 studies say that the Earth can only carry 2 billion or thereabouts.
The next
up
study,
to 2 billion. Yeah.
Up to 2 billion. So there's 6 studies that say that. You're right.
Yeah.
7 studies say it is up to 4 billion.
20 studies say up to 8.
14 studies think it might be up to 16 billion that we can carry.
Goodness me. 6 studies say up to 32 billion.
Another 7 studies say it could be, up to 64 billion people on the planet.
Now it starts to get rarer. All these numbers have been small, all right, but now they get smaller. There's 2 studies only that say that it's up to about 128 billion.
Yeah. One study says we can actually, support 256 billion people on the
Do you know what these numbers are going up like computer numbers, Mickey?
Yeah, exactly like that.
I know, right? There's one study that says up to 512 billion, and I can't imagine that side to side you'd be in locked shoulders, but what's the last one?
The last one. One study says we can support in excess of 1 trillion people, 1,024 billion people on the planet. Now the thing is this, though, and this is really important to mention before you go on with the text. What kind of living conditions are we talking about, right? And we're not talking about this here, but this is just pure numbers on the resource productivity and the food productivity maximum outputs that are being envisioned.
Yeah.
So we're not going with 1 billion people. We're not all going to eat steak, Dave. That's not going to happen. We're going to be eating some plankton sludge.
Oh, plankton. That's good. We'd be living in floating cities. And the other thing is there enough power generation, which is not considered in these studies?
Oh, that's where Tesla comes in.
Yeah, of course.
In my opinion, see, this is the thing. This is how everything connects. So we talked about Tesla, and then we talked about the Coral Castle, which connects to Tesla in some ways. Mm-hmm. But if Tesla was right about the ether and about a whole bunch of other stuff, especially free energy, the biggest problem that we're facing right now is energy. That's the biggest problem from a pollution point of view, but also from a servicing humanity point of view. Mm-hmm. Because you need energy to clean water, to pump water. You need energy to grow your food. You need energy for everything. If you could tap into an unlimited supply of energy, 99% of our problems would go away. Not to quote a song here, right? And that's really, really important to understand. And that's why a lot of the Tesla stuff is still under lock and key, and that's why we're not allowed to see it. Because if you had free energy,
100 years on, still locked up.
100 years on. If we had free energy, it would completely destroy the current pyramidal elite structure that governs this planet.
Whoosh,
overnight.
Gone. That's it.
Gone.
Yep.
If you have free energy, all right, because everything else flows from that. If you look at the UFO phenomenon, okay, it is clear to anyone that has been studying this in some detail that they must be making use of some of the Tesla speculated energy sources out there. Because Tesla's designs look exactly like what we've been looking at for thousands of years in our skies.
That's
and
right.
The water. Okay. So just to be very clear, the society we are envisioning here is a post-scarcity, Star Trek-like society. Is it free of conflict? No. But it's free of conflict that's related to resources. We no longer have to struggle with each other or against each other in order just to live and survive. Imagine food, and I mean good food, not plankton sludge, good clean drinking water for everybody. Once you've that, you can build whatever you want, education for everyone, because you no longer have to struggle to just eat and drink and survive. You've done, that's covered, it's done, we're done. You live somewhere nice, we've built your house, you've got food and water, you've got all that stuff. Now let's talk about educating you.
I'd eat crushed up insects, right?
Yeah, it works for me, man.
Yeah, I'm good.
But this is really it,
with my plankton sludge. for dessert.
We could be living a very different reality to this one. But tell us a little bit more about these population numbers.
Okay, carrying right along. It's a little unsettling to considering that as of September 2017, the global population sits at that time at 7.5 billion. Now it's what, 7.8?
Yeah,
right. It's continuing to grow by around 80 million people per year. But whether we have 500 million people or 1 trillion, we still have only one planet, which has a finite level of resources. Considering our population will continue to rise for some time, how do we accommodate everybody? The answer comes back to resource consumption. People around the world consume resources differently and unevenly. An average middle-class American consumes 3.3 times the subsistence level of food and almost 250 times the subsistence level of clean water. Wow. Just letting that absorb for a minute.
Yep.
Right? So if everyone on Earth lived like a middle-class American, then the planet might have a carrying capacity of around about 2 billion, which we've already exceeded. We're at 7.8, 7.9. However, if people only consumed what they actually needed, then the Earth could potentially support a much higher figure. But we need to consider not just quantity, but also quality. Earth might be able to theoretically, and I'm doing my fingers in inverted commas, support over 1 trillion people, but what would their quality of life be like compared to us now? Would they be scraping by on the bare minimum of allocated resources, or would they have the opportunity to lead an enjoyable and full life, whatever that means in that world? Becky.
Yeah,
perhaps Gandhi was right when he said the world has enough for everyone's needs, but not enough for everyone's greed. Poignant.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Considering, lovely addition, considering that people in developed, westernized countries are not only the highest consumers of all resources, but also the largest producers of waste. It might be time to take stock of our own consumption patterns and consider what part we can play in ensuring a healthy future for not only for Earth, but for everyone on it.
And I think that is really the critical
stick
thing.
Down.
Yeah, it's really So Australia's got a population of about 25, 26 million.
Yeah.
That's about how many people we have, right? But we produce enough food for 75 million. So 3 times what we need here. So a lot of our food is exported, right?
That's right.
And all over the world, like Dave has pointed out quite rightly, it's not that we don't have enough food, but if we were to give away food, and there's actually an interesting sub-point to that, then it would depress the world market price of that commodity. If we give away rice, just give it away. Boom, here, I give you enough rice to feed 100 million people, 500 million people. That commodity would lose value in the marketplace because the people that would have bought it now are getting it for free. So people that, speculate on the rice or, even grow the rice
market people, as well.
Yeah, they lose money.
Yeah.
We can't have that.
Futures.
That's no good.
Yep.
Well, really. Well, that's because, see, we've allowed this parasitic class to grow in our civilization that actually doesn't add any value to anybody. It doesn't.
Bag's not starting your car this week.
Well, dude, it's a fact. The classes of people that are parasitic in our civilization is now legion. We have allowed a great number of people to live completely without adding any value to anything ever, except to their own stock portfolio.
Yeah, they add value to themselves.
Yeah,
as parasitic is probably the best way of putting it. Like a mosquito or a leech doesn't contribute to anything else except its own survival.
Yeah, it just sucks the life out of the system, which is
host.
Exactly.
That's right.
And that's what's happening here, right? And these are people that work in the banking system, in the stock markets, especially the stock markets, politicians. But I could go on. I won't. But I could go on. Real people that actually add value, right? Except for the middle class, which add value, are completely ignored. People that clean, we look down on them. You know, we respect the banker and the stock market broker
as a society.
Because look at he's successful, he's making a lot of money. Yeah, but what does he contribute to society? Oh, I don't understand the question, Mackie. What do you mean?
Why would you even ask that?
Yeah, where's a cleaner or in Australia? You know what's really important in Australia? Transport, truck drivers, train drivers.
They do the hard yards, mate, for everybody.
If they didn't, there would be nothing in our shops. We would all starve to death.
That's right.
It's that simple. If the trucks stop,
District
if the trains
9,
stop,
Mackie, would be all living in our own filth and unaware of what to do next.
Yeah, completely. The critical people, right? The people that are actually that matter in civilization. The engineers that push us forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thinkers that are burned at the stake. The earth is round. Oh, I'll burn you at the stake. Shut up. What? Those are the people that drive humanity forward. You know, not the parasites. But we have allowed this to happen for a long time now, and it is now the accepted way of life. In the olden days, it was a God-given right. So the way that society worked hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, because the kings, the queens, the emperors, the czars, you know, they all said, God put me in charge of you people to look after you. All the gods or any gods, doesn't really matter. But it's a divine,
whichever one it was. I lost count now, but exactly. But I'm your leader.
That's it. Yeah. It was a divine appointment. Okay, it was a divine appointment to look after the people. So that's how it was justified, and because the people were kept ignorant, right, deliberately. They go, well, if God said so, then I guess we better listen. So that didn't really fly anymore in the 19th century, right? That's why these things happen, these revolutions, people, the workers' rights, etc., etc. This, the communism, it all bubbled up, right?
What do you mean the workers have rights, Becky?
Yeah. So what we have replaced it with is this notion of success, right? This notion of the monetary system, the notion of fiat currency and fractional reserve lending, which none of you, well, not you, my listeners,
no,
but
the other people,
don't understand. A lot of people don't.
The sheep. Let's call them sheeple.
Sheeple. We know people that work in the banking system. So I said, so you don't understand how the fiat currency. But you know what a fiat currency is? No. Do you understand how the fractional reserve lending system works? No. Do you understand how the stock market really works? I mean, it's just gambling. In fact, in some instances, you're betting on a negative outcome. That's called shorting.
That's shorting, yeah. That's what the hedge fund problem was the other month.
That's right. So this is complete gambling, unless of course you're an insider, right? If you know that 9/11 is going to happen, and you're shorting airline stock,
the big short, Mackie.
Yeah. So just to be very clear, this is where we are. This is what we have allowed to happen out of ignorance, out of coercion, simply because someone promised us something. And see, they made us afraid first, and then they promised a solution. Here it is. Don't be afraid anymore, little man or little woman. You're going to be okay. I'll look after you. Don't worry, those evildoers. We'll get them. Just sign over everything that you have. And this leads you to
Great Reset.
The Great Reset, right? just no, it's okay. It's okay. Just trust me. Hey, look, I've got a good hair. I've got a good head of hair. I got my teeth are all even. I'm smiling, right? I'm saying all the right things. You can trust me. You need to watch Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I know I keep saying this. It should be mandatory viewing for all children in school.
Absolutely,
it should be, and not as an entertainment thing, but saying, hey guys, that's how it really is, everybody.
Yeah,
that's the world we live in.
We live in the money game.
100%.
Everything is money. To succeed, you need money. To survive, you need money. Just to live, guess what? You need money.
But do you really? Now, if you analyze this, and I know we can't.
The Amish have it right, man. I'll say.
Yeah. That's exactly right. What do the Amish do when they want to build a house? They get together and build a house. Mm-hmm. Oh, what about stamp duty? What about permissions? No, it's Amish land. They can do whatever they want. They do whatever they want on Amish land. Go try to give them the building permission if you want. They want to raise a barn, they raise a barn. They don't go to builders and contractors and get bank loans and bankrupt them each other or themselves, because they get together as a community and they do it together as a community. Because it's a community. And that's how human beings are meant to live, in a community.
Yeah, so villages, Mackie, I was having a long discussion with one of my best friends and talking about villages. And the village sense that we have had from our past is such a small collection of people in a village. I mean, how many people would you say would be in a village, in a village community?
No more than 3,000 or 4,000, I would imagine.
Max, tops.
Yeah.
It could be small. What would the smallest amount be in considering
It could
the
be a
village?
few hundred.
There you go.
Could be less than that even. Yeah?
Yeah. So how many people are in a high-rise building?
That many.
Bingo. So the village mentality in a large city is approximated to any size residential building, a multi-story residential building. And yet people don't have a community in those themselves.
Bingo.
They don't, it's not supported to communicate with people in a dense city. You live anonymously. Your neighbor living next door that you might see occasionally in the lift or in the lift lobby, it's pretty much the contact you have. Or if you live in New York, it's the doorman, right? If you're lucky enough to have one. But it's been bred out of us in this, and living anonymously and removing the village sensibilities that we actually fall back to when things go wrong. So
together we stand. Yes.
Right now, when we had the floods, people just help each other.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, right?
And
you see, the best comes out of people, and they keep telling us that during the fires, people just volunteered themselves to the cause. That's because we're a village mentality people that are driven to help each other.
I'll throw this in there.
Go on.
So what you just described is absolutely true. And the flooding that happened in the more rural areas of Australia, right? Even in the more suburban areas.
Yeah.
Where you still have this sort of village sense, even though that's on the way out. And I'll make a comment to that in a second. But imagine the flooding were to happen in the CBD, in the actual central, where you talk about high-rise housing, right? They would eat each other before they help each other.
It would be the zombie apocalypse. People would be out there with bats and shotties, right?
Yeah. Because this is the thing. We have 1,000 people in a skyscraper, and before you might have had 1,000 people in a village. In a village, everybody has got their own space, pretty much, right? We've got a lot of space, mostly. And you know everybody, and you go to the same shops. You might even go to the same churches or temples or mosques or whatever. And you are a community because you get. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect and everybody loves each other and sings Kumbaya. That's nonsense. But it is a functioning human unit, right? At the core of which sits the nuclear family. So we've done two things, right? We've destroyed the nuclear family, number one, and we've destroyed the community upon which which it was built. So the community was built upon the nuclear family. So now we've pushed people into high rises, right? We've given them a little space, very little space, and that they guard jealously. A person needs their space in the city, right? So they are less likely to interact with, and plus there's usually no history. And because in a village there's usually generational history, usually, right? And even if it's not generational, you live there for years and years and you get to know everybody eventually, right? And
everyone
in your housing complex, people move in, move out. People have died and haven't been discovered for months, or at least until the stench got so bad that somebody went to check.
Oh, they just called the super and had it sorted out.
Think about that, yeah. Now, think about this as well. In a village of, let's go say 1,000 people, for argument's sake, right? 1,000 people, that might be, I don't know, might be 50 families, might be 60 families, might be 100 families, right? In that kind of scenario, it would be very, very difficult for a serial killer to hide, right?
In a small community, everyone knows the strangers.
Bingo. In a high rise of 1,000 people, you don't know what happens in the apartment.
You don't know a visitor from a resident.
No, they could be having a torture chamber next to you. You don't know, and you probably never talk to these people.
That's what that sound was.
Anonymity, complete anonymity. We have destroyed the nuclear family. Oh well, we're trying to. We're destroying the community.
We certainly don't have multi-generational living any longer. And it is something that you find in village life.
You know what they say, right? A village raises a child.
That's right.
And people say it, but they don't understand what it means.
It takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah. What it means is this. We all have families and children, but ultimately, if you have a functioning community, a village, a hamlet, whatever, where the kids are around, they play with each other. And again, I'm not saying it's going to be paradise and kumbaya. There will be conflict. There will be, problems. Of course there will be. But because you know these children, chances are that you will take more responsibility for them. You will look out for them, right? You will take an interest in their development, because they're going to be in your village. There might be the tailor's daughter, or the baker's son, or whatever it is, right? And the chances are, back in the days, they would take over their parents' occupation.
Yeah, that's right. If they had the store, they ran the store, they'd be doing that, or the pub.
Yeah, so that's the way we used to live for a long, long time. Before that, we lived in tribes. That's even a smaller unit. But the point is that we have completely destroyed that way of life in the big cities, and a lot of people are now moving into the big cities, right? Because that's where they think the money is. Of course, it isn't, unless you're equipped to live in the big city. And we have now allowed for the complete anonymization of our neighbors and of our interactions. You may never, ever talk to any of the 1,000 people in your building. Never know their name. You might see their faces, yeah, but you have no interest in them. That's why I said, if the flooding, Dave, were to happen in dense housing like this.
Oh yes.
We're talking rape and looting and murder, because it's an opportunity, right? People aren't born bad necessarily, but opportunity will make it that way. And because you don't have any empathy for your fellow human beings in that building, and I'm not saying everybody's like this, but I think that's how big cities largely function. Okay,
yeah, I 100% agree.
So that was a deliberate activity that has been that was undertaken, or has been underway for hundreds, if not thousands, of years, ever since we first started building cities. And you know what we think about cities as well, right? You know why that came about, and agriculture and all that stuff. So in fact, the question to cities was, the answer to that was agriculture and the domestication of animals. Like, cities were needed at some point in our past. And how do we do that? Well, we have to have agriculture, and we have to have domestication of animals. If we don't have that, we can't have cities. It is that simple. And what you get with that is specialization. And once that sets in, the specialization of tasks, etc., you start becoming a very complex society. And it's still okay. It's still manageable. But then you become even more detached from any value that you add. Think about this for a second, Dave. How much value do you think each person truly adds to our civilization in the meaningless work that we do? The value is in running the civilization and keeping it going, but not necessarily advancing it, just making sure the status quo is maintained. I think the vast majority of us are engaged in work that maintains the status quo for our civilization, not driving it actively forward.
Correct.
Unless we're engineers or scientists or inventors or artists, for argument's sake, right? Or even primary producers, etc., etc. We don't really have a hand in driving our civilization forward. Not really. Dave and I are in jobs that don't really drive civilization forward. What we do here, hopefully, makes people think. For me, this is one of my creative outlets. If I didn't do this, I'd just probably go nuts, to be honest with you.
Completely agree. I would have difficulty. I write music, and I've got some music on Spotify. Look me up. I've written a book, and I know, Mekki, you're writing at the moment. And looked at those things are my creative outlets, and I'm creative, but I'm also a problem solver. And it's why this is not a resume. I hope that the things that I bring allow the people to continue doing their thing day to day. That isn't. It's contributing to society. I think, Mekki, we do that in a way that is it's not directly supporting front line, because we're not on the breaking edge or the leading edge or the bleeding edge of either tech or science, but we're reporting it back. We're reporting it back to the people where it should matter. Well, that's what I feel that we're doing. It's kind of not trying to self-justify why we exist, because I feel that's kind of a thing, but knowing that there are certainly people that contribute zip to society.
Maybe I was a little harsh, but to your point though, this is really maybe the fundamental test, right?
Yeah.
I've always looked at it this way: if I leave this world a better place than I found it, then I've done something worthwhile.
It should be the goal of everyone's life.
Well, but we know it isn't. Some people just like to watch the world burn, right?
Yeah, that's fine. There's always just witnesses.
Yeah. It's a bystander. This is not a spectator sport. It's life. Get into it. look, but there's truth in that, right? And I hopefully do it through the raising of my children and the interactions of other people that we have, maybe people that we work with, and making everyone's life better if we can. It's true, but ultimately, imagine if you had free time where you didn't have to work about money or making money or being engaged in work that might not necessarily be what you would choose for yourself if you had if you truly had a choice. Brings me back to my free energy and argument, etc., etc. Whereas the elite, though, of course, and I need to bring it back to this, unfortunately, sees us as cattle. That's it. And in fact, the term that's being used frequently is useless eaters. Useless eaters. The vast majority of humanity is seen by the elite as useless eaters. You can look it up yourself. There's a lot of philosophy around this.
Yes. A
lot of things being written. And they don't see any value in us as, apart from maybe some potential livestock or servants or for their convenience. And why is that? Because they were born into privilege. And someone that's born into privilege has a very different view on the world than you or I. Because they were bred to power. If you're bred to power, you don't really stop to think what it means to send people to war. I mean, you know what it means, but you don't care. If you have to send people to war, thousands, tens of thousands, millions might die. Okay, so what? Because people say, the government would never do this and the government would never do that. And this brings me back to this whole, depopulation agenda as well.
Yeah, completely.
The thing is, absolutely, they're doing it every day.
They do it. They have done it. They're going to do it.
Myanmar is the most obvious thing that's going on right now. So you think Myanmar is this outlier, right? Myanmar, that's just crazy people, the junta that's killing all these protesters. No, that's how every country in the world works. Every time there's a protest, go out there. They're trying. So what's happening is they're saying to the military junta, no, you shouldn't have imprisoned our politicians that we elected, and you should give back control. We want you out of power. The junta says, no, we're not going to give up power.
That's not going to happen.
So now just overlay this into the country that you live in. You go to the power holders in your country, go over there and say, I don't think you're doing a good job, so can you just leave? No. The vast majority of the countries in this world would not do that. Or you might say, this political system that we have, Westminster or the Knesset or whatever it is that you have, the Parliament, Bundestag, I don't care. They don't work. Let's try something else. No, you're an anarchist. They will kill you. They will imprison you if you're lucky, but they will kill you.
If you're lucky.
If they think you have a chance of succeeding. If you try to break the existing power structures, you will be penalized.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Where we are. Just to be very clear, Myanmar is not an exception to the rule. Okay? If you decided to change the world in a meaningful way, better systems, more liberty, free energy, they would find ways for that not to happen, okay? And to make sure that you cannot do this. And this, so just, I want everybody to be perfectly clear here. The greatest horrors that you can imagine, that you cannot imagine the government would sanction or allow to happen or put forward, they already have done. Operation Northwoods, 9/11, MK Ultra, and I'm talking about the Americans here specifically. Look at what the Nazis did in their reign. Look at what the Japanese did in World War II. Look at what the Chinese are doing today.
That's right.
And not just the Chinese, anyone.
It's everyone, Mickey. Okay? To be honest.
So just to be very clear, I'm not singling anyone out here. These are all the entrenched power structures. They think they have a divine, well, maybe not divine, but they believe they have a right given to them by a higher authority, or maybe they feel like they've taken it, that's why they have it, to do whatever they want. They will put you in harm's way. They will put your children in harm's way because they can, and they do it every day. It is actually insane to think that the government wouldn't do it. That's the insanity. Because remember 9/11? The government would never do this. I remember having discussions with Americans. It would never happen. Government couldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. You're talking crazy, Mickey. I can't believe they would do it. They're sending people to war. They know they're going to get killed or will kill others. They know this. Oh, but it's for good reason. Really? Really? The invasion of Afghanistan was a good reason. Was it?
Or Iraq, for that matter.
No, they were not. Arguably, and the jury is still out as far as I'm concerned, but arguably World War II was a just war on the side of the Allies. Okay? Considering all the things that went on. Were there transgressions on either side? Absolutely. Was the atomic bomb necessary? Maybe. If you argue that you might have saved millions and millions of lives that would have been lost in the physical invasion of Japan, so you could argue, yeah, sure. I mean, if you make that utilitarian argument, you could. But I think World War II was a just war, or more just than any conflicts since, right? And in most of the conflicts that we've seen since then have been about power struggles, resource allocation, land grabs, strategic considerations around all of those things, and just one-upmanship. My system is better than your system. We should all sit down together and figure out what the best system is, and off we go, right? So just to be very clear, so now people say, this whole depopulation agenda, that's craziness. So I needed to build that up for everybody to understand where we're going here. No, it is not crazy at all. What does a farmer do, Dave, when he runs out of food and water for his herd, be it cattle or sheep? I don't care. What does the farmer have to do?
Crawl through hoops to get a grant, which is a
can't
loan
get
from the government.
No grant.
So have
nothing.
To buy some to bring it in.
Nothing to buy. There's nothing.
If there's nothing to buy,
nope.
He has to cull
the herd.
His herd to be able to leave enough head of cattle that's going to be able to subsist on that property.
Now, the conversations of the cattle would be like this. But, the sheep. Let's talk about sheep. Yeah. But the farmer needs us, he needs our wool. He loves us. He looks after us. He gives us food. He takes our wool. We're useful to the farmer.
Yes, but Gary, stop feeding us for a while, but it's going to get better.
Yeah, it's going to get better. He wouldn't, the trucks are coming in and our sheep are leaving, but he would never do that. He needs our wool. We know this, okay? This is what's happening. Come on, guys. What they don't understand, being sheep, of course, is there are higher forces at play, which will eventually lead to their destruction.
That's right.
So that's where we are. People find it, even today, impossible to believe that the government, which is an abstract term, but it's people, right? We're talking about people here. And people in power. And people in power are necessarily corrupt. It is the nature of the beast. Very few people that attain power, true power, remain ethical or moral people. And we're seeing this now in the halls of Canberra, where it seems to be, Dave, a sexual abuse and rape culture. That's what I'm seeing. I'm sorry. But that's what I'm seeing there, right? And not just in Australia, across other nations.
Oh, okay? Yeah. There's even some now in the US that it's come to light.
Completely. Because it's power. And if you get drunk with power, all right, you act a certain way. You become invincible, right? There are very few people that are truly incorruptible, right? So now we're talking about biological warfare, right? You say, oh yeah, but that's only for research purposes and to make sure the other guy, can't surprise us with it. We should not have biological warfare. We shouldn't have any warfare, but we certainly shouldn't have any biological warfare, right?
No,
because you can't stop it. Once it's out there, it's rampant. Look at the SARS-CoV-2 now. Now, wherever it started, and I believe it was a deliberate thing, but wherever it started, it's now running wild. Okay. And maybe the elite have the Uber vaccine, right? The Uber prophylactic, whatever it is, and maybe they do. But for the vast majority of us, even the vaccines that are developing aren't going to be perfect protection. Right?
Well, with the variants, they're going to become useless.
Yeah. So I want everybody to understand
this for years.
Yeah, that's right. The elite's mindset is very. I know it's a nebulous term, the elite. What I specifically am referring to, and this is part of the hypothesis, I believe, and Dave, you can disavow all knowledge, but I believe that for thousands of years, maybe longer, the same entities have been in charge. The same actual personages. Okay. Yes. I believe that we live the life of mayflies. I believe they have uncovered the secrets to either immortality or extreme longevity. Immortality is difficult to attain because there's the heat death of the universe, etc., etc. But extreme longevity, I believe, is absolutely on the horizon, even for us. And when I say extreme longevity, I'm talking about living for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years. There's no good reason why we couldn't. And see, this is where we lose a lot of listeners here, I think, Dave, because this is just a concept that blows everybody's mind. No, you're talking crazy now, Mackie. No, I'm actually not. We discussed this in detail, in depth. We've looked at why we die, the causes of death, senescence, cell senescence. We looked at telomeres and telomerase.
That's right.
Okay. Now, I'm not saying, if someone shoots you in the head, you're not going to die. Sure, but barring an accident or murder, your physical body deteriorates because we have a built-in kill switch, a trigger that is activated fairly early in life, in fact, that lets you age. Aging is the thing that makes no sense. Okay, if you could stop aging, you actually could, right? I mean, the understanding is there, and it might take a little bit longer to figure it out. But if there were high civilizations before this one, they probably figured it out. And they stopped aging. They stopped getting sick. Okay, and they did whatever they had.
I think they reapplied it to us, Mackie, because we were getting a bit on.
Yes, you're right. You're 100% correct. I think that's what happened, right?
Yeah.
So that leads us again. So these entities, you can't really call them people anymore because they've got a very different worldview from us, right? And think about this for a second. Let's say light speed is this thing. Light speed is the speed barrier, the speed limit for the universe. I don't think it is, but let's say it is, right?
Yeah.
If you live 100,000 years, a trip to Alpha Centauri, all of a sudden, it close to the speed of light, becomes a feasible thing, right? In their, if you live for 100,000 years, in their terms, a journey of 20 years would be like a weekend trip.
Yeah.
Right. So that just to be clear, what we're talking about here, that your perspective on everything changes. I looked at the fly in a public toilet yesterday. It was a tiny, like a day fly, whatever, like a tiny little fly, right? And I'm thinking that fly was probably born in that bathroom.
That's right.
Right. And it probably will die in that bathroom the next day or two or maybe a week, who knows, right? And all it will ever know is living in that bathroom, never understanding the immensity of the world, what could be out there, etc., because it could never travel that far, because it could travel from the toilet to the sink and then to the mirror and maybe to the edge of the door. But if it invested any more time in traveling, its life would be over, right? Whereas if you live a longer life, possibilities open up. You can do more things. But you look at people that live for 80 or 100 years, if you live to 100,000 years or 200,000 years, you wouldn't even consider them as your peers or as a group of things you should consider mattering. Not at all, because it wouldn't matter. And it also explains why, Dave, we seem to be looking at a status civilization that is connected to the UFO phenomenon. Because if you live for 100,000 or 200,000 years, you probably would be using things a lot longer, right? You probably wouldn't be as energetic in change.
Yes.
Right?
Because yes.
If you have a star-faring civilization, you need to make sure that things stay the same for thousands and thousands and thousands of years for all your star-faring people to come and still recognize what they left, right?
So I've got another point which takes us back to that show we were talking about. It's kind of prelude to the 500th show that's coming up, and that is, Mackie, if we only lived till about 8 years old, we wouldn't ever know that we had adult teeth coming.
Correct.
All right. So living to 30, we didn't know what senility was, I suspect.
Or menopause.
Or menopause, for that matter. You would just presume everyone's fertile forever. Living past those ages, then we start to see a decline at the moment, the way our bodies are designed, with a 120-year maximum life cycle. But if you could stretch out the years between 25 to 35 for 10,000 years, what else would we then discover about ourselves that we could do or had, or things that we don't know? We just don't know. Remembering, Mackie, that this is one of my favourite arguments now that you've brought it up recently, and that is that we had another gland.
Yes. At
the back of our nose that we only discovered last year.
Yes.
Right. So what else haven't we discovered, and what don't we know the human body is capable of, and what the next things are that it can do? Could you imagine if the whole skin peeled away, right? And we shed like snakes later? right? Once you get to 1,000 or something, right?
Yeah.
We don't know because we haven't gotten there yet.
No, we have never lived past certain points.
That's right.
And what Dave is saying is, at certain points in our life cycles, chemicals kick in that make us change our bodies. So we're born, right, as a child, and we grow up, and that's all. Everybody understands this, and we're all familiar with this, but we don't think about it. But Dave is right. You have milk teeth. First you have no teeth. Then you have milk teeth. Then you get your second set of teeth, right? But then afterwards, puberty sets in. Chemicals are released in your body in a planned fashion by your DNA, right? That release chemicals that make your hormones act on, and your sexual organs start developing, etc., etc.
You would never have known your body could grow hair.
Yeah, and then your body it doesn't grow hair; it just changes. Like all of a sudden, these bulbous things start happening, right? And you're right. Your face starts sprouting hair. These are all things that if you never lived past puberty, you would never know. And then
you couldn't even predict it.
No, that's exactly right. And as you get, in fact, Logan's Run, they see for the first time they see this old guy. Remember, they meet him in the marshes. Like, oh my God, they touch him. What is this? What? They've never seen an old person.
That's right.
Beard, wrinkly skin, saggy skin, all that stuff. But imagine you don't get old, for argument's sake. And this is what the telomerase and telomeres will do, right? So let's say you don't get old, and all these other triggers happen. They're no longer inhibited, and you don't no longer die, right? Before they could happen. But let's say your skull starts growing, for argument's sake, right? Another row of teeth appears, right? Because after the year 200 or after the year 500, you get another row of teeth.
Wow.
Or maybe another finger grows, right? Or you like Dave said, maybe you shed your skin. I mean, I have no idea.
I just made that up, right?
Yeah.
But imagine if imagine if that's what happened.
But we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. Who's to say that we don't grow physically more? And we are, in fact, the giants of ancient times.
Wow.
Right? So the point is that
if you can live to 10,000 years, you'll be a giant. Yeah.
But maybe. But let's say we'd never live past 40. Like you said, there would be no menopause. You might never experience male pattern baldness.
That's right.
Okay? Because it's just not in your experiential horizon, because you don't live that long. You just don't know. Now, if we arrest the aging process,
planned out for me now.
Yeah, no. But if we arrest the aging process, because the aging process that really kills us, let's say we can arrest it, and then all of a sudden, all these other things that start happening, the other chemicals kick in, and another development happens, and who knows what that is? We don't know what that is, right? It is really. That's where we are, and I think that's where the elite is. So the elite has gone through these developments, and they know what it is, and they're going through it, right? And as fetuses, we're going through these stages called reptilian, etc., etc. And like because the embryo looks like a little fish, that looks like a lizard. So that happens to the embryo. That happens. It's I'm not making this up, right? So who's to say that in later life you don't go through similar changes potentially? Okay, because
imagine if we're the lizard people, Mackie.
Yeah, well,
maybe. It sounds so preposterous when I say it out loud, but
no,
wow.
We don't know. Look, let me put it this way. You see a caterpillar, okay? And the caterpillar eats and goes around, looks like a little worm, it's a nice little worm, and it goes in a cocoon for whatever, 2 days, 10 weeks,
a couple of weeks,
whatever. Whatever it is, right? And then out comes a butterfly. What?
If you said that to the caterpillar, hey, you know what? If you can have a discussion, you go, hey, you're going to turn into a butterfly. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Go on. She does a lane from Seinfeld and pushes you. Get out of here.
Get out of here. But this metamorphosis is real in nature. And not just for the caterpillar. Many other species are like that change from one thing to something completely different. Right? So the key thing to understand here is that we are living blind. We don't know the truth of it because we've never lived long enough, because we've accepted that we only live to a certain point. And the elite, and again, this is all connected, guys. The elite wants us to be like this. They want us to live like that. And think, 100 is good, 120 years, that's phenomenal, right? But we have stories of people living much longer than that. I mean, they're oral stories. They're coming through us through myths and legends and in the Bible and other things as well. But they exist. They're there. And king lists and god lists of ancient Egypt and Sumerians, etc., etc. So now we are talking about the elite here that I believe are in fact that long lived. Okay, and I also believe they're subterranean. I also believe they're starfaring. I believe all of these things, right?
Yeah.
And we are like the poor third world, inhabitants on top of the planet, exposed to hard radiation and weather and things like that, right? And all of a sudden, everything should make sense because, depopulation, I mean, they have to cull the herd. That's what you have to do. And next week we're going to talk about biological warfare. We'll get to it, but we needed the preamble to set the tone, I think.
Absolutely agreed. And look, stay tuned for 𝐺𝐵's After Hours show, where you can call up and call in and be part of it. It's awesome. All right, well, take care. See you next week. This is David 𝐫𝐞𝐯𝐨𝐥𝐮, or this has been David 𝐫𝐞𝐯𝐨𝐥𝐮 Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com.